ॐ भूर्भुवः स्वः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो नः प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः. Namaskar my dear friends. This is video number 4 on the views of Bhagwan Sri Ramana Maharshi on self-inquiry, on very important and subtle points. All points and doubts are clarified in a very detailed way. I start this video with the heading Turn the Mind Inward. Whence does this I arise? Seek for it within. It then vanishes. This is the pursuit of wisdom. Here I is ego. When we direct the direction of ego inwardly, then it is eliminated. God illumines the mind and shines within it. One cannot know God by means of the mind. One can but turn the mind inwards and merge it in God. The divine gives light to the mind and shines within it. Except by turning the mind inward and fixing it in the divine, there is no other way to know Him through the mind. Turning the mind inward is done by practice and dispassion, and that succeeds only gracefully. The mind, having been so long a cow accustomed to graze stealthily on others' estates, is not easily confined to her stall. However much her keeper tempts her with luscious grass and fine fodder, she refuses the first time, then she takes a bit. But her innate tendency to stray away asserts itself, and she slips away. On being repeatedly tempted by the owner, she accustoms herself to the stall. Finally, even if let loose, she would not stray away. Similarly, with the mind, if once it finds its inner happiness, it will not wander outward. By repeated practice, one can become accustomed to turning inwards and finding the self. One must always and constantly make an effort until one has permanently realized. Once the effort ceases, the state becomes natural and the Supreme takes possession of the person with an unbroken current. Until it has become permanently natural and your habitual state, know that you have not realized the self, only glimpsed it. The mind should not be allowed to wander towards worldly objects and what concerns other people. However bad other people may be, one should bear in hatred, one should bear no hatred for them. Both desire and hatred should be eschewed. All that one gives to others, one gives to one's self. If this truth is understood, who will not give to others? When one's self arises, all arises. When one's self becomes quiescent, all becomes quiescent. To the extent we behave with humility, to that extent there will result good. If the mind is rendered quiescent, one may live anywhere. The quest has to begin with the mind turned inward to oppose the rushing thoughts and to understand the location of the I. When the mind eventually sinks in the heart, undisturbed bliss is overwhelmingly felt. There is then feeling which is not diverged from pure awareness, that is, head and heart becomes one and same. The I thought is the primary clue. The Aham is the one irreducible datum of your experience. Seeking its source is the only practicable course you can adopt to realize the self. The ego is said to have a casual body, but how can you make it the subject of your investigation? When the ego adopts that form, you are immersed in the darkness of sleep. In your quest for the self, the one infallible clue is the Ahamvriti, the I amness, which is the primary datum of your experience. No other clue can lead you direct to self realization. Self inquiry by following the clue of Ahamvriti is just like the dog tracing its master by his scent. The master may be at some distance, unknown place, but that does not at all stand in the way of the dog tracing him. The master's scent is an infallible clue for the animal and nothing else, such as the dress he wears or his build and stature, etc. counts. To that scent, the dog holds on undistractedly while searching for him, and finally it succeeds in tracing him. The enquiry into the source of Ahamvriti touches the very existence of the ego. Therefore, the subtlety of the ego's form is not a material consideration. Whether the nominative case, which is the first case, appears or not, the sentences in which the other cases appear have as their basis the first case. Similarly, all the thoughts that appear in the heart have as their basis the egoity, which is the first mental mode I, the cognition of the form I am the body. Thus, it is the rise of egoity that is the cause and source of the rise of all other thoughts. Therefore, if the self conceit of the form of egoity, which is the root of the illusory tree of samsara, bondage consisting of transmigration, is destroyed, all other thoughts will perish completely like an uprooted tree. Whatever thoughts arise as obstacles to one's sadhana, spiritual discipline, the mind should not be allowed to go in their direction, but should be made to rest in one's self, which is the Atma. One should remain as witness to whatever happens, adopting the attitude, let whatever strange things happen. Let us see. This should be one's practice. Be still, be silent. The whole of Vedanta is contained in the two biblical statements I am that I am and be still and know that I am God. I am that I am sums up the whole truth. The method is summed up by be still and know that I am God. What does stillness mean? Cessation of thinking, which is the universe of forms, colors, qualities, time, space, all concepts and percepts, whatever. Stop the thoughts which are your enemy, and the mind will remain as your pure being, the immortal I. The thought, who am I, will destroy all other thoughts, and like the stick used for stirring the burning pyre, it will itself in the end get destroyed. Then there will arise self realization. Remaining quiet is what is called wisdom insight. To remain quiet is to resolve the mind in the self. Telepathy, knowing past, present, future happenings, and clairvoyance do not constitute wisdom insight. When the mind, which is the cause of all cognition and all actions, becomes quiescent, the world will disappear. The self is that where there is absolutely no I thought, that is called silence. Every book says be quiet or still, but it is not easy. That's why all this effort is necessary. Even if you find one who has at once achieved the Mauna silence or supreme state indicated, you may take it that the effort necessary has already been completed in a previous life. Such effortless and choiceless awareness is reached only after deliberate meditation. Knowledge dawns in the heart. Even if one thinks constantly, I, one will be led to that place that is the mind's origin in the heart. Enquire into the nature of that consciousness which knows itself as I, and it will inevitably lead you to its source, the heart, where you will unmistakably perceive the distinction between the insentient body and the mind. The latter will then appear in its utter purity as the ever present self supporting intelligence which creates, pervades its creation, as well as remains beyond it unaffected and uncontaminated. Also, finding the heart will be experienced as being the heart. When this experience becomes permanent through constant practice, the much desired self realization or mukti is said at long last to have been achieved. The I am the body illusion has broken forever. Just as a man would dive in order to get something that had fallen into the water, so one should dive into oneself with a keen, one pointed mind, controlling speech and breath, and find the place whence the I originates. The quest has to begin with the mind turned inward to oppose the rushing thoughts and to understand the location of the I, When the mind eventually sinks in the heart, undisturbed bliss is overwhelmingly felt. There is then feeling which is not diverged from pure awareness. That is, head and heart becomes one and the same. In the center of the heart cave, there shines alone the one Brahma as the I, the Atma. Reach the heart by diving deep in quest of the self or by controlling the mind with the breath and stay established in the Atma. Therefore, by the practice of merging the ego in the pure heart, which is all awareness, the tendencies of the mind as well as the breath will be subdued. Therefore, on diving deep upon the quest, who am I and from whence, thoughts disappear and consciousness of self flashes forth as the I within the cavity of every seeker's heart, and this is heaven. This is that stillness, the abode of bliss. If one inquires, who am I within the mind, the individual I falls down abashed as soon as one reaches the heart, and immediately reality manifests itself spontaneously as I. Although it reveals itself as I, it is not the ego but the perfect being, the absolute self. Since void of thought, reality exists within as heart. How to know the reality we term the heart? To know that it is merely to be that in the heart. Ramana Maharshi. When the mind that is subtle goes out through the brain and the sense organs, the gross names and forms appear. When it stays in the heart, the names and forms disappear, not letting the mind go out, but retaining it in the heart is what is called inwardness, antarmukha. Letting the mind go out of the heart is known as externalization, bahirmukha. Thus, when the mind stays in the heart, the I, which is the source of all thoughts, will go, and the self, which ever exists, will shine. When a room is dark, you need a lamp to light it. But when the sun rises, there is no need for a lamp. Objects are seen without one. And to see the sun itself, no lamp is needed because it is self luminous. Similarly, with the mind, the reflected light of the mind is necessary to perceive objects, but to see the heart, it is enough for the mind to be turned towards it. Then the mind loses itself and the heart shines forth. Sapurna, the heart, can be felt in a subtle way even when meditation has sufficiently stabilized and deepened, and the ultimate consciousness is very near, or during a sudden great fright or shock, when the mind comes to a standstill. It draws attention to itself so that the meditator's mind, rendered sensitive by calmness, may become aware of it, gravitate towards it, and finally plunge into it, the self. Watch and witness. The self is ever the witness, but it is best to remain as one's self. Whatever thoughts arise as obstacles to one's sadhana, spiritual discipline, the mind should not be allowed to go in their direction, but should be made to rest in one's self, which is the Atma. One should remain as witness to whatever happens, adopting the attitude, let whatever strange things happen. Let us see. This should be one's practice. In other words, one should not identify oneself with appearances. One should never relinquish one's self. This is the proper means for destruction of the mind, manonasha, which is of the nature of seeing the body as self, and which is the cause of all the aforesaid obstacles. Destroy the ego. Identification with the Supreme is the other name for the destruction of the ego. Can the ego ever agree to kill itself? This question is a sure way to cherish the ego and not to kill it. If you seek the ego, you will find it does not exist. That's the way to destroy it. Enquire into yourself, and the apparent ego and ignorance will disappear. Whence does this I arise? Seek for it within. It then vanishes. This is the pursuit of wisdom. If the first person I exists, then the second and third persons you and he will also exist. But inquiring into the nature of the I perishes with it. You and he also perish. The resultant state, which shines as absolute being, is one's own natural state, the self. Aham virti, I thought, is broken. Aham sapurna, the light of I is unbroken, continuous. After the thoughts subside, the light shines forth. The individual soul of the form of I is the ego, the self, which is of the nature of intelligence. Chit has no sense of I, nor does the insentient body possess a sense of I. The mysterious appearance of a delusive ego between the intelligent and the insentient being, the root cause of all these troubles, upon its destruction by whatever means that which really exists will be seen as it is. This is called liberation, moksha. Just as one who wants to throw away garbage has no need to analyze it and see what it is, so one who wants to know the self has no need to count the number of categories or inquire into their characteristics. What he has to do is to reject altogether the categories that hide the self. The world should be considered like a dream. Whether the nominative case, which is the first case, appears or not, the sentences in which the other cases appear have as their basis the first case. Similarly, all the thoughts that appear in the heart have as their basis the egoity, which is the first mental mode, I, the cognition of the form, I am the body. Thus, it is the rise of egoity that is the cause and source of the rise of all other thoughts. Therefore, if the self-conceit of the form of egoity, which is the root of the illusory tree of samsara, bondage, consisting of transmigration, is destroyed, all other thoughts will perish completely like an uprooted tree. We are ever in Sushupti. Becoming aware of it in Jagrat is Samadhi. The Ajnani cannot remain long in Susupti because his ego pushes him out of it. The Jnani, although he has squashed the ego, it continues to rise again and again due to prarabdha. So, for both the Jnani and the Ajnani, the ego springs up, but with this difference. Whereas the Jnani enjoys the transcendental experience, keeping its lakshya aim attention always fixed on its source, the Ajnani is completely ignorant of it. The former is not harmful, being a mere skeleton of its normal self, like a burnt up rope. By constantly fixing its attention on the source, the heart, the ego gets dissolved into it like a salt doll which has fallen into the ocean. Question: if I am always here and now, why don't I feel it? Maharshi replies, That is that is the point. Who says that it is not felt? Does the real I say it or the false I? Examine it. You will find it is the wrong I. The wrong I is the obstruction. It has to be removed in order that the true I might not be hidden. The feeling I have not realized is the obstruction to realization. In fact, you are already realized. There is nothing to realize. If there were, it would have to be something anew, not existing so far. That would occur sometime in the future. What has birth will also die. If realization were not eternal, it would not be worth having. Therefore, what we seek is not that which must happen afresh. It is only that which is eternal and which is not known. Due to obstructions, that's what we seek. Ignorance is the obstruction. Remove it and all will be well. The ignorance is identical with the I thought. Find its source and it will vanish. The I thought is like a spirit which is not palpable and it rises up simultaneously with the body, flourishes on it and disappears with it. The body consciousness is the wrong I. Give it up. This is done by seeking the source of the I. The body does not say I am. It is you who says, I am the body. Find out who this I is. Seeking its source, it will vanish. You must distinguish between the I, pure in itself, and the I, thought. The latter, being merely a thought, sees subject and object, sleeps, wakes up, eats and thinks, dies and is reborn. But the pure I is the pure being, eternal existence, free from ignorance and the thought illusion. If you stay as the I, your being alone, without thought, the I thought will disappear and the delusion will vanish forever. In a cinema show, you can see pictures only in a very dim light or in darkness, but when all lights are switched on, all pictures disappear. So also in the floodlight of the Supreme Atma, all objects disappear. The moment The ego self tries to know itself. It changes its character. It begins to partake less and less of the jada in which it is absorbed, and more of the consciousness of the self, the Atma. So this video is completed, and next video number 5 will start with eradicate the sense of doership, kartrita. Thank you for watching this video. Please like, comment and share the video and subscribe the channel. Namaskar.